Just as one state Supreme Court election ends, another is already brewing. Plus, Wisconsin Republicans and Governor Tony Evers still working their way towards a state budget. Emilee, Fannon, J.R. Ross have details in tonight's Capital Connection.
We begin this week as the 2026 campaign cycle is heating up. Why? Because the first liberal has announced her candidacy for state Supreme Court. Chris Taylor, who is a Wisconsin appeals judge, former Democratic lawmaker who served nearly 10 years in the Assembly, will be challenging conservative Justice Rebecca Bradley. Now, this is not the same type of tone and energy and race that we're going to see that we just saw in April. Why? Because the liberal majority is going to be cemented until 2028. But, of course, it's going to be a big one for conservatives to not have liberals expand their majority on the bench.
It's also an interesting test case for liberals of what has been the secret of success. There's been a formula for a candidate. There's also an apparatus they built. The formula has been a female sitting judge, former prosecutor, Susan Crawford, Janet Prosewicz, Jill Karofsky, Rebecca Dowd. All four had that in common. Taylor is a judge, is a woman, has not been a prosecutor. Is that big of a deal? People will tell you that this past spring, for example, Susan Crawford used that experience as a shield for attacks on crime and to throw attacks back at Brad Schimmel on crime as a platform for it. We'll see if that's going to be a big deal. But the apparatus has been very successful. It raises good money. They spend it efficiently. It's been successful. Can that carry a more liberal candidate, what you normally see in a Supreme Court race, to victory in April of 2026? We'll see. Now, we still have a ways to go to see who's going to actually run, if anybody else gets in. But Taylor looks like she's going to be the liberal candidate. For conservatives, yes, Rebecca Bradley told me she's going to run again in 2026. They're kind of waiting to see does she actually pull the trigger, because there are a lot of hurdles for a conservative right now in the spring election. So, yes, she's looking at running. She says she's going to run. She's looking at how to be successful. But there's also a vacancy in a federal appeals court in Chicago that she could apply for. There are other people who kind of argue, well, maybe she'll go, this is a very tough task. And if she doesn't run as a conservative incumbent justice who's favored by a lot of legal types who give money, if she doesn't run, that's a bad sign for conservatives about their chances in spring race in Wisconsin right now.
And I can bet you we are not going to see as much money as we saw in this past April, topping over $100 million spent on the campaign between Crawford and conservative candidate Brad Schimmel. And there's a big reason why, because like I mentioned, this is not a race in 2026 up for control of which side will take control of the bench. On the other side of things, there's likely going to be not a lot of money invested by Elon Musk, because he also said this week he is going to be cutting back on political spending. And remember, he spent over $25 million on this race for Schimmel just this past April, handing out $1 million checks to voters. But without him pumping a lot of money into conservative Rebecca Bradley's campaign, it could impact her.
Plus, is there donor fatigue, because they went all in. I tracked $109 million. There was more money spent by conservatives and liberals that I could track. They went all in. Do they feel the same? Like, okay, I'm going to write a big check in April of 26 after seeing not what happened in April 25, but April of 23, April of 2020, there's a pattern there. So we'll see.
Also, let's recap last weekend, because Republicans gathered in Rothschild for their annual state convention, and this was once again a message of unity. Why? We just mentioned this, right? They've had a string of double-digit defeats in spring elections. They're trying to revamp this formula of how do we win in non-presidential years, but also when Donald Trump is not on the ballot. So there was a lot of calls specifically by Senator Ron Johnson, hey, if we're not going to be united, we are not going to win. So they're really still trying to figure all this out. Also was a test, too, to see whether Chairman Brian Schimming would be ousted. Obviously, he's not planning to step down, but there was some talk and some chatter about calls for him to step down as a leader.
It's a reflection of the fracture of the base. Look, they were flying high in November. They just won the presidency. They won Wisconsin electoral votes. Remember, other than Trump, it's only been Ronald Reagan in the last 40 years who've won Wisconsin presidential race. They felt good. 6 months later, they're going, what is wrong with us? All because of a Supreme Court race that underscores the challenge of when Trump is not on the ballot, they haven't figured out how to bring the Trump voter out. How do you do that? Is it engaging them on the issues? Is it, what do you do? There's that traction is just not there. And it's been prevalent the entire time since Trump came on the scene in 2016. Off-year elections have not been good for Republicans. They got to figure that out. They also got to figure out why they're so fractured in terms of the groups who are involved. These groups do turnout for campaigns. They help get voters out the polls. They're at war with each other a little bit. Again, another problem. Schimming has asked for a report being led by State Treasurer John Leiber to be produced sometime early July. talk about their issues and a path forward. Maybe that's a peg to start getting themselves turned around, but they're definitely a party kind of down the dumps right now trying to figure stuff out.
All right, and looking ahead to next week, there's a big question. Are GOP leaders and Governor Tony Evers any closer to reaching a deal on tax cut? JR, you had some reporting on their meetings earlier this week.
Yeah, they met twice on Wednesday. Robin Vos, Assembly Speaker, told his caucus that they met once in the morning, again in the afternoon. They didn't really get into the discussions, but things are going in the right direction. Look, any talk is positive because the governor and Republican lawmakers usually don't meet in person very often. They did it March 26th. Now I've got a second day of meetings. There are signs of trying to work out a deal, which is important because we're getting late in the cycle of the budget cycle. So in Wisconsin, we're not like the federal government. If there's no new budget by the end of the fiscal year, we keep going as is. But symbolically, you want to be done on time. June 30th is your deadline to have that budget passed and off the Evers' desk. Can they get it done? Sure. If they reach a bunch of deals with the Evers, they can get it done, or they have a lot of long nights ahead of them trying to knock this thing out, and I think they're trying to go for the other option of strike a big deal and get it done.
All right, that will do it for this week. Thanks so much for joining us.